visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Gerard Pratt, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Chief Petty Officer Peter Swift. Today we commemorate the 15th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq. Whilst conflict in Iraq may seem like a uniquely modern phenomenon, Australian forces have been deployed to Iraq a number of times over the past century. In 1915, airmen of the Australian Half Flight supported British Indian forces in a failed land campaign to secure rich oil deposits from the Ottoman army and uncooperative Arab communities. A more successful campaign was conducted in 1916 to 1918. During the Second World War, Australian airmen flew operations throughout the Middle East from RAF bases at Habanaria and Basra, near Baghdad. During the Gulf War of 1990 to 1991, more than 1,800 members of the Australian Defence Force served in the region to help enforce United Nations Security Council resolutions against the Ba'athist regime of Saddam Hussein. Following the end of the Gulf War, the UN Security Council demanded Saddam Hussein give up Iraq's ballistic missiles and weapons of mass destruction. Dissatisfied with Iraq's obstruction, the Security Council maintained sanctions on Iraqi trade. In 2003, the United States asserted that Iraq was still concealing weapons of mass destruction and had forged links to Al-Qaeda, who had perpetrated the 9/11 attacks on the United States. The US demanded military action against Saddam's regime, but the UN did not agree. Weapons inspectors were reporting very little in the way of prohibited weapons and materials. Unable to obtain UN support to overthrow the regime of Saddam Hussein, the United States pressed ahead with a coalition of the willing, with support from Britain and Australia. Today marks 15 years since US, British and Australian forces participated on the invasion of Iraq. FA-18 Hornets from the Royal Australian Air Force provided close air support to coalition ground forces and air introduction against Iraqi forces. The Royal Australian Navy played a significant role in the Persian Gulf. HMAS Canimbla served as a command and control platform to coalition forces, which included HMA ships Anzac and Darwin, and was involved in the capture of Iraqi mine layers in late March, which included a large quantity of sea mines. HMAS Anzac provided naval gunfire in support of Royal Marines who went ashore on the Alfour Peninsula. An Australian Special Forces Task Group secured parts of Western Iraq to prevent Scud missiles from being launched by Iraqi forces. On the 1st of May 2003, US President George W. Bush declared an end to major combat operations, ending the period of invasion and ushering in a military cooperation that would involve the Australian Defence Force until 2009. Today we remember the invasion of Iraq. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. We're honoured to acknowledge Lieutenant General John Shanahan, Director Defence Intelligence, Warfighter Support within the Office of the Under-Secretary of Defence for Intelligence, United States, and the accompanying delegation. Also Mr. John King, President, ACT Branch, Return and Services League of Australia. We also warmly welcome the delegation from the Department of Veterans Affairs who are joining us today for our ceremony. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Our Lady of Dollars Catholic Primary School, Chatswood, and from Victoria, Hurstbridge Primary School. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the national anthem.
Rejoice, for we are in thee.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops at Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through until the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Driver Bert Clayton Martyn. Bert Martyn was born in Sydney on the 16th of September 1891 to William and Jane Martyn. He was baptised the following month at St Saviour's Anglican Church at Redfern. His father worked as a carpenter for the government printing office, and the family lived at Braeside in North Sydney. Martyn grew up in an area and attended North Sydney Public School. Prior to the First World War, he was working as a warehouseman and still living at home. Martyn enlisted in Sydney on the 21st of August 1915. After initial training, he was posted to the Army Service Corps based at Moore Park, where he became a driver. In December, following a request for specialist wireless equipment and operators, the 1st Australian Pack Wireless Signal Troop was raised. The unit also required a transport element, and Martyn was posted to the new unit, based at Broadmeadows in Victoria, on the 13th of January 1916. He embarked from Melbourne with his unit aboard the transport ship Salander, and at the beginning of February, bound for Mesopotamia, today's Iraq. After stops at Colombo and Bombay, he disembarked at Basra in March. On the 25th of April, the first anniversary of the Anzac landings, the first of the Australian stations set off from Basra with the 15th Indian Division and marched north on a journey of 230 kilometres to the Euphrates River. A month later, a second station was transported to Nasiriyah on the banks of the Euphrates by boat. Initially ignored by British signal staff, the work of the two Australian stations soon came to the attention of General Sir Stanley Maude, commander of the Allied forces in Mesopotamia. He charged the Australians with intercepting all enemy wireless traffic. A cipher expert was sent from Britain, and it was noted the first enemy code was broken within 23 hours of his arrival. This had a marked impact on the conduct of the remainder of the campaign. The 1st Anzac Wireless Signal Squadron was soon formed, containing a headquarters unit, 2 Australian troops and 1 New Zealand troop. Each troop consists of 4 wireless stations, half of which were larger transmitters carried on limbered wagons. Conditions in Mesopotamia were horrendous. The weather, poor sanitation and pests meant that disease was a more deadly enemy than the Ottomans. At the start of July, Martyn was hospitalised in Nasiriyah. He returned to his unit in the middle of the month, but his health had weakened. On the 13th of August, he was admitted to hospital in a dangerous condition, seriously suffering from dysentery. His condition continued to deteriorate, and he died on the 16th of August. He was 24 years old. Martyn was initially laid to rest at the Makina Massis Extension New Cemetery, but was later reinterred in the Basra War Cemetery. Bert Martyn's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Driver Bert Clayton Martyn, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms and the hope of a better world. They shall grow not old, as we are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, or the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you all for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.